Got the majority of NFL training camp starting in about 3 weeks as we ask the biggest questions for AFC North teams heading into training camp. We have Kyle Long with us and a former AFC North great, Bryant McFadden, who won 2 Super Bowls with the Steelers, and that's where we start. What an interesting team this is becoming on a daily basis. You're ramping things up. You trade for Ramsey, you trade for DK, you got Aaron Rodgers. A lot of questions about how those new pieces fit together, B-Mac. So you have a lot of options here. Where are you going?
Well, I'm going with on the offensive side, Kyle, Chris, and I'm starting with the wide receivers because you talked about adding Aaron Rodgers, you talked about adding DK, but who else, right? When you look at the wide receiver position, we know we have a legit wide receiver 1 in DK Metcalf, but who is going to emerge to be number 2 and number 3? Right? Will it be veteran Robert Woods, who they just signed from the Houston Texans? Will it be Calvin Austin III? You know, when you look at Roman Wilson, he's a guy that was expected to have an impact as a rookie, but because of injuries, he couldn't stay on the football field. So that's an issue because if you look at this team, go back a year ago at this time, you had George Pickens and no one else. They had to figure it out throughout training camp, and it seemed like throughout training camp a year ago, they didn't figure it out. So it's almost like it's the same situation, Kyle, at the wide receiver position. Because if you have championship-like aspirations, especially if you don't have that superstar player at the quarterback position, you're going to need a lot of production from your wide receivers, not wide receiver. So right now, they have one. They got to figure out who will emerge to be a consistent, reliable pass catcher for Aaron Rodgers outside of DK Metcalf.
You know what? Defense wins championships. You understand this better than anybody here, B-Mac. The defense for the Pittsburgh Steelers, that's where I'm going to train my focus on today. It's that inside linebacker position. Who's going to be playing right next to Patrick Queen? Patrick Queen does a great job for this football team, but I want to know, Pittsburgh, the Yinzers want to know, is it going to be Peyton Wilson or is it going to be Cole Holcomb? Peyton Wilson's a guy that I've been obsessed with since college. He does everything the right way, and he flashed last year, but the health has been a historical concern for this young man. And when he is on the field, he sees ball, gets ball for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think he's going to be the favorite. Cole Holcomb is the other one. If you can get this middle of the field locked down with Queen and, of the 2 guys that I'm talking about, a winner, you're going to have a real solid middle of the field for the Pittsburgh Steelers defense.
Kind of unsure what we're going to get from the Pittsburgh Steelers this season on the field with so many new pieces. I feel like we know what we're going to get from the Baltimore Ravens year in and year out. The question mark is when we get to the offseason. But going into this year, both of you guys are looking at something on the offensive line. Kyle, since you're our O-line guy, what is your biggest question?
Well, for the Ravens, I mean, it's like your identity is run the football, smash the hell out of the defensive line, and allow Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry to be superheroes. It sounds really easy in theory, but in practice, it takes 5 offensive linemen as well to get this job done the right way. And for the Baltimore Ravens, I'm looking at the left guard position, okay? And you've got 3 names there that can, come up and be the dude. And I'm starting here at the left guard position with Andrew Voorhees, who's dealt with an ankle. Ben Cleveland, question mark. Garrett Dillinger, 7th round pick out of LSU. These guys all have experience. These guys all have the body type. They've all got the skills to be able to get the job done and be the guy for the Baltimore Ravens. But whoever emerges to be the best one of these 3 is really going to help this Ravens team, who I and a lot of others in our space think is going to be a very, very tough team to play this year offensively.
You know what, Kyle, I'm right there with you. You talked about, who's going to figure out that guard position. Well, that's because Patrick McCarry left and signed a nice deal with the Jacksonville Jaguars, and he was one of the more versatile players on their offensive line throughout his tenure there in Baltimore, but he commanded the interior spot of their offensive line. He did so in a consistent way. So that's very, very important because you talked about the running game. Over the last few years, there haven't been an offense that has been as dominant as the Baltimore Ravens in terms of running the football consistently year in and year out. That has been their calling card. So yes, it's very, very important to identify who's going to step up and fill in for the shoes left by Patrick McCarry.
Both looking at offensive line questions there with the Baltimore Ravens, but kind of nitpicking a little bit because we know they are good. How about the Cincinnati Bengals? It seems to always come down to Joe Burrow's health. Last season he was healthy, but the team around him wasn't good enough, especially defensively. And now, B-Mac, major question marks on the defensive line with maybe one of the best pass rushers in the NFL and their #1 draft pick.
Yeah, I'm going right defense because the offense is solidified. They can run the football, they can throw the football. We know that. But a year ago, to your point, Chris, they couldn't stop anybody. They couldn't stop an infant from crying with a warm bottle of milk right there next to them. They couldn't. So now you look at the issues and the concerns, the same concerns are right there again for the Cincinnati Bengals. Will Trey Hendrickson be there? Will they ever get a deal done with their first-round pick in this past year's draft in Shamar Stewart? Will Miles Murphy show his first-round pedigree that made him a first-round selection back in 2023? Because if you do not get timely stops and put pressure on opposing quarterbacks, it doesn't matter how many points your offense can score. You're going to give up just as many as they score, and we saw that from a year ago. So that is the biggest conundrum with this team. You talked about your best defensive player, a top 4 player on your team. We don't know when he will show up. And the same can be said for your first-round pick that you just select to improve your defense to Shamar Stewart. So that is the biggest question mark for me about the defense and who's going to rush the passer for them.
Let's just pretend that the defense got figured out. Shamar Stewart got the right language in his contract, and he got the same deal that Amarius Mims did. Let's say Trey Hendrickson's really happy, goes out for a nice sushi dinner, just changes his mind, decides to be part of that defense, and they get it all figured out. Well, you still got to protect Joe Burrow and your other investments at the receiver position. And how do you do so? You protect it by getting the right guy starting at your offensive line. And which side of the line is in the quarterback's vision every single play? It's the right guard spot. And that is where the battle for the Cincinnati Bengals looms. It's Lucas Patrick, it's Cody Ford fighting for the opportunity to protect one of the league's best quarterbacks. I can't wait to see which one of these guys rises to the top by the time training camp ends. And this offense, we know it's going to roll. It's going to be even better with this competition at right guard.
And last but not least, or maybe they are the least, the Cleveland Browns. Look, we don't expect them to win a lot of games, but they're interesting, BMAC, because it has to be one of the most talked about quarterback rooms in recent memory.
Yeah, one of the more talked about quarterback rooms in recent memory. And you're talking about a journeyman in Joe Flacco and a bunch of young guys trying to establish themselves. And I'm starting right there because I do believe personally, guys, week 1, Joe Flacco will be the starting quarterback. But the question mark is, how will the depth chart look after Joe Flacco? Because if he is your QB1, who is going to be the backup? Who is going to be the third string guy as well? Which plays a very, very significant role. Because to your point, Chris, and let's keep it real, we don't expect to see Cleveland win a lot of ball games. I know anything can happen in the National Football League. That's why it's the most entertaining game here in our country. But we really don't expect them to win a lot of ball games. And if that's the case, Kyle, eventually we will see QB2, whoever that is, get an opportunity to start. So that's what I'm looking to see, how this quarterback room will unfold throughout training camp, because from OTAs and mini camps, the talk of the town was Shedeur Sanders. We were hearing positive things about Shedeur Sanders on the football field. Will they keep that momentum, or will Dylan Gabriel emerge to be a guy that people are talking about? Oh, you can't forget about veteran Kenny Pickett as well. So there's a lot circulating with this quarterback room. I personally think Joe Flacco will come out of training camp as QB1, but QB2 and QB3 is very, very intriguing for me, because that would tell the tale in terms of who we will see take meaningful snaps throughout this regular season for the Cleveland Browns.
Deontay Johnson is in Cleveland, correct? Deontay Johnson refused to go in a game. He refused to go in a game because it was too cold, B-Mac. Well, he's going to find out that the humidity and the heat doesn't last forever in Cleveland, and that the honeymoon phases of his stay in Cleveland will come to an end. I'm interested to see if he's gotten over his fear of the cold. That's really my Browns take. I want to see if he's out there with those Brownies this fall.
That lake effect snow, that lake effect wind. I would love to see it if he's out there being asked to go in when it's 20 below and snowing. Guys, thank you so much. Answering questions, or at least asking the biggest questions for these teams in the AFC North. But the Ravens looking to win their 3rd straight division title. They are the co-favorites to win the Super Bowl right now, along with the Bills and the Eagles.